Yo, welcome back to the MMA Fight Realm. Thanks for tuning in. If you are new, it is your boy Chris, and I'm back with another picks and predictions video. This time for UFC Vegas 97. Sean Brady taking on Gilbert Burns in the main event. Hope you guys like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think of these picks in the comments, and let me know your picks in the comments as well, man. Let's break it down. Leading off the card, we got Budka taking on Andrade Petroski. Now, these are two grapplers who, they're gonna grapple here in this matchup. You tend to see two grapplers end up in a striking match, but these two I don't think are going to do that. And if anything, Andrade Petroski is probably the more dangerous guy on the feet, more experienced. He's fought the tougher opponents by far. He's fought and beaten guys like Gerald Meerschaert, who have tested him in the grappling as well. Budka, 7-3, only 24 years old. I'm not impressed. Honestly, I don't think that the guy is UFC caliber. I don't think that he's going to get the job done in this matchup. I think it's actually going to be tough for him. I don't really see a path to victory since Andrade Petroski is very well rounded in the grappling himself, and in the striking, I haven't really been impressed with Budka. So, Andrade Petroski, he's gotten knockouts before. He's gotten the split decision over Gerald Meerschaert, got it done using his grappling and wrestling. And he's training with guys like Sean Brady. He's definitely improving. So it wasn't a fun fight to watch for sure. In his last one against Josh Rem, he was in a must-win situation. He said it himself, and he got it done by laying and praying. Something similar to what I would have expected from Budka in any type of fight in the UFC. So I don't think that Budka is going to be I think he's going to be going into this fight without his X factor, which is his grappling, and that's just going to be tough. I just don't see a path to victory for him in the striking. So I got to go Andrade Petroski here to get the job done, either by submission or by decision in this fight. Next up, we got Yizha taking on Gabriel Santos. This should be competitive. It's going to be interesting to see how Yizha deals with someone who can match him in the grappling exchanges. And as for Gabriel Santos, he's in a must-win situation after going 0-2 to start his UFC career. But they were not bad performances. If you watch Gabriel Santos fights against Lerone Murphy in his debut, he pretty much displayed all of his tools in a tough fight with Lerone Murphy. He stepped up on short notice. He had success in the striking as well as in the grappling. The calf kicks were adding up, the takedowns were adding up, and I thought he did enough to get his hand raised in that fight. Judges felt the other way. It is what it is. It was an extremely close fight. I wouldn't say it was a robbery. So, I wasn't mad with whoever won that fight, the outcome. And, the judges leaned Lerone Murphy, but I did think that Gabriel Santos put up a good fight against a guy who's, now creeping his way into the top 10. And then in his second fight against David Onama, same thing. He was having success in the striking. He was having success in the grappling. And he was winning the fight until he wasn't. At about the halfway point, I will say, Santos was looking like he was starting to tire out. He might have some cardio issues. And David Onama was able to capitalize on that. He landed a shot in the pocket, an uppercut that was just a fight-ending punch. And that was all she wrote for Gabriel Santos in his second fight in the UFC. He got knocked out by David Onama. Practically was winning the fight until he wasn't, like I said. And, very unfortunate. But he finds himself in a bounce-back situation here against Yizha, who came up short in the Road to UFC finale against Jiang Li. Strong grappler, and a lot of control time in that finale against Jiang Li, but the judges leaned damage that night, and it didn't seem like Yizha had much of a stand-up approach in that fight. I think that loss might have done him some favors, because in his most recent fights after that Jiang Li fight, he has been showing that he's more willing to strike with his opponents. But I do think he's going to be a step behind in the striking in this fight. Gabriel Santos those 2 losses are going to pay off in his career. I think he's going to learn from them. I think he's going to bounce back, and I think he's going to show that, he's improved from his last fight. It's been about almost a year layoff for Gabriel Santos coming into this fight, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a better version of Gabriel Santos. So I'm going to lean with the guy who is 0-2 in the UFC right now, but definitely has more tools and more ways to get this job done. I think Yizha is going to look to grapple. That is the path to victory for him. But Gabriel Santos is dangerous off his back. He's got submissions, a good submission game, and I think he's got good get-ups. I don't see him just accepting being on bottom in this fight, and I think he's going to force the fight on the feet, where he does have the advantage in the striking. So I'm going to go Gabriel Santos here by decision. Next up, we got Felipe dos Santos taking on Andrade Lima. Now, both guys are coming into this one with a bit of momentum, coming off wins in their last fights. Felipe was able to get the split decision win over Victor Altamirano in his last one, and it was a gritty performance. If you are a fan of Felipe, you know that he seems to find himself in these style of fights often. Even back going to his LFA days. In the first round, though, we're talking about the fight, Altamirano was able to take advantage of Felipe's forward pressure and take him down before Felipe was able to get any shots off. But Felipe did a good job of, finding his way back up, landing damage on Altamirano in the second and third rounds. And judges, once again, they leaned damage over control in that fight. Altamirano, I will say, didn't really match Felipe well in the striking, and Felipe, that was where he had the clear advantage. He kept it on the feet long enough to convince the judges that he got the job done, and it was a good win. It was a gritty win, gritty performance. Judges, they're gonna lean damage on these damage versus control type of fights, and Felipe, he throws himself in the fire. He is looking to damage at all times. He's forward pressure all the time. He doesn't mind taking a punch to give one. We saw that in the Manel Cop fight, that he stepped up on short notice, and it didn't really work out in his favor. He got dropped in the first round early in that fight. Manel Cop showcased his power, and Manel was able to drop him, and despite that, Felipe was still able to wear the shot, make it a war. I do think that there's no question Felipe is very durable. And Andrade Lima, I don't expect Felipe to treat Andrade Lima any different than he's treated Manel Cop or Victor Altamirano. I think he's going to come forward and try to make this a dogfight. Andrade Lima, very talented kickboxer who's gotten off to a great 2-0 start to his UFC career. The only fighter to win by DQ due to being bit by an opponent. Remember back to his debut against Igor Severino, where he was struggling with the takedowns, but he found his way back up using submissions, did not accept bottom position, and made it a fight on the feet, and forced Igor Severino to bite him in his debut. Only fighter to win by DQ that way in the UFC right now, and hopefully that's the last time we do see that. And Lima, much like Felipe dos Santos, like I said, he was struggling with the takedowns, but he's a great striker. He has good setups, that kickboxing background. He's got great calf kicks. I think he's a lot more patient than Felipe in his approach on the feet. I think he's much more measured, and he packs up a lot of power behind his punches. I think that Andrade Lima, he's going to look to deliver damage while staying away from it. He's a great kickboxer. He's got good setups. He's probably going to try to set up Felipe to walk into something due to Felipe's forward pressure. And I can see Andrade Lima capitalizing on that. Honestly, man, he's much more measured in his approach. I think he's the more technical fighter, technical striker. And if anything, the one of the two that I could see taking this fight to the ground would probably be Felipe dos Santos. And we've seen Andrade Lima not accept being on bottom at all. So I don't see Felipe keeping Andrade Lima down. I can see Andrade Lima working his way back up and just overall being the cleaner fighter, taking less damage in this fight. And I got to go with Andrade Lima here in a close decision win. I do see this fight going all the way to the judges' scorecards. Felipe dos Santos has proven to be very tough, very durable in there, and I don't see him getting finished by Andrade Lima. So I gotta lean Andrade Lima here by decision. Next up, we got Isaac Dulgarian taking on Brendon Marrote. Now, we don't have the greatest read on Brendon Marrote, being that he's coming off a TKO loss against Terrence McKinney that lasted only 20 seconds. And, McKinney landed a knee, and that was all she wrote for Brendon Marrote against that fight. And, after that loss, Marrote has made the decision to go down to featherweight. And this is not new territory for him. He's fought at featherweight before, but the last time he's fought at featherweight was back in 2019 in the regional scene. And looking at the level of competition in the regional scene, I do not rate it highly. I think he's fought guys who were very inexperienced or just had terrible records. And, since we didn't get to see his striking in his UFC debut, I had to rely on what I saw on the regional scene. And he's fought guys, like I said, just straight cans, honestly. He's got good front kicks, and he will look to land the right hand often against these guys, and he's had a lot of success in the regional scene. He had never gotten finished before coming into the UFC, but again, I think it's due to that level of competition. It's no secret, I think this is a bounce back opportunity for Isaac Dulgarian, a guy who many feel was robbed in his last one against Christian Rodriguez, and you can argue that the grappling and control time that he racked up in that fight was enough to get the job done, but C-Rod just forced the fight back up on the feet. And when your style is to look to bring the fight to the ground as much as Dulgarian was in that fight, and you're not having success, it could sway the judges the other way. So I wasn't surprised to see C-Rod get the job done there. Could have gone Dulgarian's way as well, but another very close fight that you can't really say was a robbery in my opinion. And before that questionable loss, Dulgarian was undefeated, with all of his wins being by finish and all in the first round. So honestly, we got a lot of answers to how his cardio was going to look after 3 rounds. We got to see a bit of how his striking is going to look. I think that loss is going to pay off in Isaac Dulgarian's career for the foreseeable future. And we saw him in his debut against Francis Marshall, a fighter who we saw recently get a win on short notice on UFC Vegas 96 against Dennis Bazooka. Marshall is a decent wrestler himself, and it did not matter against Isaac Dulgarian. He was just outpaced and outmatched on the ground. He never found his way back up, and Dulgarian landed several ground and pound strikes to get the TKO finish in the first round. The questions for Dulgarian really are, how is his cardio going to look after the first? We got those answers, like I said. And, I'm going to be picking Dulgarian to get the job done here and work his way back up to the win on the win column. I think we're going to see an improved Dulgarian, and that will be enough to get his hand raised here against Marrote. It's going to be interesting to see how Marrote deals with the cut to featherweight. I mentioned it's been 5 years since he's fought at this weight class, and I can see him struggling with the takedowns just like everyone else has against Dulgarian, and then Dulgarian getting another finish on his record in this fight. Man, I gotta go Dulgarian here by finish, either in the first or second round. I do not see this fight going over 2.5. I think Dulgarian gets this one done early. Next up, we got a Jacqueline Amorim taking on Vanessa Demopolous. 2 BJJ standouts going against each other, and it's hard not to point out that Vanessa, in her time in the UFC, has gotten some very questionable split decision wins. I thought she lost against Kanako Murata. She got taken down 5 times and controlled for 10 minutes. She was outstruck and she got the win. And then I thought she lost in her last one against Emily Ducote. She got outstruck by 40 plus strikes, had no success getting the fight to the ground, and yet she got the win. So, a couple of gifted decisions for Vanessa Demopolous, and you have to wonder if the trend will continue if this fight goes to the scorecards. So Vanessa, she is game no matter where the fight goes, but she prefers to get her grappling going. She's yet to be finished in the UFC, but what stands out is Vanessa has a 30% takedown defense, and that is a big eye-opener coming into this fight against Amorim, who is basically just a one-dimensional ground specialist. And I say specialist because, you know, she's got some crafty submission game. Amorim have shown very little will to keep any fight standing for longer than 30 seconds. She is immediately shooting for the legs and looking to take the fight where she does her best work. She's a highly credited BJJ specialist, and it shows in her style. In her debut against Sam Hughes, she had a lot of success in the first by getting Hughes down, and she had the rear naked choke locked in. But Hughes, she did grab on the gloves, and despite it being illegal, the ref didn't see it in time, and I really think that's what saved Hughes from being finished in the first round of that fight. Honestly, man, I think Amorim had that submission locked up, and Hughes, she was the first fighter to take Amorim into the second round, and that is where Amorim got exposed for having, you know, just a terrible gas tank and just no desire to showcase her stand-up. Prior to that, you know, like I said, you know, Amorim was just mauling her opponents all in the first round. Hughes took her to the later rounds, dragged her out, and exposed her. She paid the price. She took a loss in her debut, and since then she's been on a 2-fight winning streak where she has shown a lot of improvement in the cardio and in her, you know, just ability to get these submissions locked in, where she hasn't really had to change her approach much though, and I don't think she's gonna have to change it here. You know, she was able to submit Corey McKenna in her last fight with an armbar off of her back, and then against Montserrat Ruiz, it was just a one-sided beatdown where Amorim had all the advantages in terms of height and reach and ground game. I do think Vanessa is going to be one of the better jiu-jitsu practitioners that Amorim has fought in her career, but if Vanessa plays BJJ with Amorim, I can see Amorim coming out on top of those exchanges and even, you know, getting a submission win herself. She's crafty off of her back, and she's patient when she's on top position. She won't force the submission, and she will wait for it to present itself. Those are good qualities to have when up against a girl like Vanessa Demopolous, who, let's be honest, she should really be 2-5 in the UFC. You know, the gifted decisions are making her record look a lot better than what she really is. Demopolous also 35 years old, while Amorim just 29. If I had to pick who will make improvements and show an even better version of themselves, I would pick Jacqueline Amorim, and I think she's the one that's going to get the job done in this fight. I got to go with the youth here. She's a better grappler, and she's got almost a 10-inch reach advantage in this fight. Vanessa, she's going to look to try to take the fight to the later rounds, where Amorim has shown some cardio issues, but I'm going to bank on her improving in her weaknesses and getting the job done here against Vanessa Demopolous. And I think she gets it done either by submission or by decision. Maybe she gets the first finish on Vanessa Demopolous here. Next up, we got OSP Ovince Saint-Preux taking on Ryan Spann. One of the fights on the card that is a bit predictable in terms of the outcome. In my opinion, I think it's either Spann will get the early finish or OSP is going to show his veteran experience and make it a tough fight. You know, Spann, he has been a huge letdown in his UFC career. He's got the build, he's got the power to be a dominant light heavyweight, yet the guy just seems to find a way to lose, man. He doesn't have good cardio. We saw that against Nikita Krylov. He doesn't check the calf kicks. We saw that against Anthony Smith, and he doesn't move his head out of the center line well enough to avoid the power. We saw that against Bogdan Guskov. So this guy, you know, he has been exposed for all of his weaknesses. For me, I think Spann is in a desperate position now on a 3-fight losing streak coming into this one. I will say though, you know, Krylov currently in the top 10, and Smith, he was ranked 8th at the time that they fought, so they are credited opponents. But the most recent loss to Bogdan Guskov, an unranked guy who was only 1-1 in the UFC, you know, that just goes to show Spann can lose to anyone on any given night. And now he finds himself here against the 41-year-old OSP, coming off a split decision win to Kennedy Nzechukwu. And I thought it was tough to watch, man. OSP, he looks like he's in his 40s, definitely moving very slow in the octagon, and yet Kennedy, he just let the fight slip away. Not enough power in his punches, and OSP was just the more active fighter overall. He outstruck Kennedy 143 to 106 and picked up the split decision win. OSP picked up the win, but I'm not sold on him at all. I don't think we are seeing a resurgence of OSP at 41 years old, and now he finds himself against a guy who can match him in all the areas, but with power from Spann really should be the difference maker in this fight. You know, I think Spann will eventually land something that will either fold OSP or just maybe the accumulation of the power is going to add up to a TKO finish here for Ryan Spann. I can't bet on Spann to get it done, but for the pick, I do have to side with Ryan Spann here. Despite Spann being on the downtrend, I think the youth and the ability to end the fight with one punch is still present. So I'm going to side with danger in this fight, and I say Spann gets a finish against OSP in this fight, man. Next up, we got Chris Padilla taking on Rongzhu. This is our striker versus grappler matchup of the card. Padilla, he cashed as a big underdog in his debut on short notice against James Yontop. He took some shots on the feet, but eventually he got it done in the first by being able to get the back of Yontop and lock in a rear naked choke. You know, Padilla is tough. He's able to take damage, but the striking is going to be a step behind here in this matchup against Rongzhu, and he will need success in the grappling in order to get the win in this fight. And for Rongzhu, he's going to have to replicate a lot of what got him back into the UFC. In his road to UFC finale, he was matched up against a strong one-dimensional wrestler, Shin Haraguchi, and Haraguchi went for 25 takedowns. All right, 25 takedowns, and only got Rongzhu down on 4 of them. So it was an amazing performance in showing exactly what to do in terms of keeping the fight standing and having the cardio to deal with all the constant grappling exchanges. Rongzhu, now already having experienced an opponent who is looking to get the fight to the ground at all times, I think it's going to benefit him a lot in this matchup. Rongzhu, only 24 years old, already 30 fights into his pro career. He's training at American Top Team. He's making all the right decisions to become a better fighter, and I think the path to victory for him is clear in this one. Stay calm in the grappling exchanges, don't accept bottom if taken down, and be ready to deliver damage while on the feet. Maybe Padilla is just a next level grappler, and you know, he's gonna be able to control Rongzhu, but I just have a hard time seeing that. The pick is gonna be Rongzhu here by knockout or by decision. I think Padilla, you know, he has been finished before, but it was back in 2016. I think he's proven to be, you know, durable enough to make it to the scorecards. However, I wouldn't be surprised if Rongzhu lands something that puts his lights out. But I gotta lean Rongzhu here by decision. Next up, we got Trevor Peak taking on Yanal Ashmouz, and it is always fun to watch Trevor Peak, man. All gas, no brakes, rarely ever takes a step back, and is willing to go out on his shield. He will not quit on himself, and that's why he's never been finished in his pro career. There's not much technique, but he is a junkyard dog who is only 9-2 and 29 years old. So he's going to improve with more experience. He's got the forward pressure striking, decent wrestling, but if there's one thing that stands out the most, it's his power and his durability. In his 2 losses, he's looked bad, but I can't say he was ever out of the fight because he just doesn't quit on himself. In his last fight against Charlie Campbell, he ate a lot of leg kicks and was a step behind in the grappling with Campbell. He got controlled and lost every round on the judges' scorecards. And then against Chepe Mariscal, he just got outclassed, man. Chepe, who we know is a dog himself, just proved he was better everywhere in that anywhere the fight went, you know. And the wins Peak has in the UFC, I can't really say they hold much weight. You know, he destroyed Eric Gonzalez in the first round. Gonzalez never picked up a win in the UFC. And then against Muhammad Yahya, Peak won every round, but it was surprising to see him not get a finish in that fight. You know, we've seen that Muhammad Yahya is just, he's proven that he doesn't belong in the UFC, and Peak wasn't able to finish a guy like that. So you know, he finds himself here in a matchup against Yanal Ashmouz, a guy with less fights than Peak. He's 7-1, 4 by knockout and 2 by submission. So 6 finishes out of his 7 wins, and he's also never been finished. 2 guys who have never been finished. They got a lot of finishes. On paper, this is going to be an amazing fight. Ashmouz is coming off the loss to Chris Duncan, and it was clear he was fighting with a broken hand or broken wrist after the first round. Duncan threw a head kick and it caught the arm of Ashmouz, and that kick by Duncan was strong enough to break it. And Ashmouz, he told his corner after the first, he really could have quit. He could have quit after the first, but he continued, and credit to him for staying in the fight. He didn't get finished, and then in his debut, you know, he flatlined Sam Patterson, was able to find his way into the pocket, deliver some dangerous hooks, and that is what he is capable of doing. This guy can end the fight with one punch. He seems to find his way in the pocket. He's got a good technical approach. He's got good footwork. Man, Ashmouz, he's very well rounded, and I think he's very capable in the wrestling as well. You know, he did get taken down by Duncan twice, but he never accepted bottom position, even with a broken arm. I think the big question for me in this matchup is, can Ashmouz handle the pace and the pressure that Peak is going to come with? And will he mix in takedowns when available? Because we have seen Peak get taken down in his losses. I think Ashmouz has the power to land a big shot in the pocket, and he can mix in the takedowns, but it's been a year since we have seen him. The layoff is either going to cost him or pay off here, and I do think that the layoff, you know, it might bite him, but I gotta go with Yanal Ashmouz here. I think he is the more technical striker. I think he's gonna get the job done here, and I say he gets it done by decision. Trevor Peak has proven to be extremely durable. He's yet to be finished, and I don't see a guy who's, you know, coming off a year layoff finding a way to finish a guy like Trevor Peak just yet. So maybe some ring rust will show in this fight, and I say Yanal Ashmouz gets the job done here by decision. Next up, we got Alessandro Costa taking on Matt Schnell. Schnell hasn't won a fight in 2 years, and he's 1-3-1 with a no contest in his last 5 fights. 34 years old, and by now I think it's safe to say the chin is extremely unreliable, man. 5 out of his 6 losses in the UFC are by knockout, and the other one was by submission. So he's been finished in all of his losses, and I strongly doubt that the chin is going to hold up as he ages and as he progresses into his pro career, man. Especially not in this fight against Alessandro Costa. Costa is just 2-2 in the UFC, but this is a guy who stepped up on short notice in his debut. He won a round against current number 3 ranked Amir Albazi, and you know, he didn't win the fight, but he impressed in that first round for sure. Knockout win over Jimmy Flick, knockout win over Kevin Borjas, and then a close decision loss to Steve Erceg, where again he was able to pick up a round against a tough competitor who fought for the title, you know. And Steve Erceg is the common opponent that these two share. Erceg obviously flatlined Matt Schnell, had everyone convinced he was able to do the same to Pantoja had he had the opportunity, and Erceg came short. And you know, that was only Erceg's 2nd knockout of his career, so I think the knockout was more accredited to Schnell's questionable chin. And I think this fight is simple to pick, in my opinion. I have to go with Alessandro Costa to get this one done. I'm just sold on Matt Schnell not being the fighter that he once was, man. I don't think that he's going to be able to deal with the newer generation, and that's exactly what Alessandro Costa is, man. I know this is a step up in competition for Alessandro Costa, and you know, this is an opportunity for Schnell to show that he can hang with the new guys. But for Schnell, man, I just don't think he can. Costa, very well-rounded, training with savages like Diego Lopez. I think he's in a good position here to put himself into the top 15 with the win over a guy like Matt Schnell, who has shown some very bad durability. So I got to go Alessandro Costa here by knockout. Next up, we got Kyle Nelson taking on Steve Garcia. Steve Garcia, 4 wins in a row, 4 finishes in a row. He is on a roll lately. The move to featherweight is definitely paying off. We have seen him put himself in the pocket and just be willing to slug it out with all of his opponents. And despite him being rocked in a few of those exchanges, he manages to find a shot of his own. And credit to Steve Garcia, man. His style is fun to watch and it's working for him. So he's also improved in his wrestling and his get-ups in order to keep these fights standing where he does his best work. And we saw the improvement against Melquizel Costa. Costa went 2 for 10 on takedown attempts. I think it's fair to say Garcia's style really won't change coming into this fight against Kyle Nelson, and it doesn't have to. You know, Nelson, he is on a roll, 3-fight win streak, and he's shown a lot of improvement defensively as well as in his output. Nelson, prior to the win streak, would have fights that went to the scorecards, and he would have less than 50 significant strikes landed. You know, against Doo Ho Choi, he went to decision, only landed 20 significant strikes. Against Jai Herbert, he only landed 41 significant strikes. But in this winning streak, he's got much better numbers. 82 against Fernando Padilla, 59 against Wilder, and he only needed 33 in his last one against Algio, but it was a first round finish for him in that fight. So definitely seeing improvement in the accuracy as well. Credit to Kyle Nelson for improving in those areas. And you know, the high guard defense has always been working out for him recently, but in this fight I can see Garcia using his forward pressure, landing several body shots and uppercuts. I think Garcia's dirty boxing is what can get the job done here for him. And Nelson, he is a tough guy, but we have seen him break before. Billy Q, he wore him out, finished him in the 3rd round. If Nelson is the one on the back foot, I don't see how he's going to win this fight. He's gotta be the one pushing the pace. And in a fight with Steve Garcia, that just is proving to be quite a challenge lately. I'm gonna side with violence here, and that's Steve Garcia. I can see him maybe taking a couple of shots like he's been accustomed to, but eventually the output and the pressure will get him the finish in this fight. I gotta go Steve Garcia by knockout, and I think he's gonna continue the trend of finishes that he's been putting on, man. Next up, we got the co-main event. Natalia Silva taking on Jessica Andrade. Rising prospect Natalia Silva is getting an opportunity to fight against a former champion, Jessica Andrade, and this is going to be a great fight. Andrade has gotten a finish in more than half of her wins in the UFC, and Silva has yet to face much adversity in her rise to the top 10. She 30-27 Jasmine Jasudavicius. She 30-27 against Andrea Lee. A spinning back kick finish against Teresa Bleda, and a 1st round finish against the terrible Victoria Leonardo. All right. She did drop a round on the scorecards against Viviane Araújo, but if you watch the fight back, she was just being held on the cage, and Araújo wasn't able to get off any damage. Natalia broke the clinch in the last seconds and was able to get off a ton of strikes in that 1st round. And you can argue she had more damage in the round, but judges gave Araújo the round with the control time. And that was the only round she dropped in her UFC career so far. She is just very well-rounded. The karate background, she's got great takedown defense. In this fight, she cannot be passive about the clinch with Andrade, because Andrade will be looking to take her down and land elbows. Andrade does a great job at making her opponents uncomfortable with her power and her pressure. Against Marina Rodriguez, she was able to take advantage of a slip by Marina in the 1st round, and she never let Marina get back up. Then in the 3rd, she got a very crucial takedown, which might have been the difference maker in that fight, considering she won by split decision. You know, she definitely dropped that 2nd round against Marina Rodriguez, but you know, the height and reach is also what played a role in that fight. So it's tough to relate it to this matchup, since the height and reach, you know, Jessica Andrade is obviously going to be the smaller girl. She's usually the smaller girl, but it's not going to be as wide as it was in the Marina Rodriguez matchup. And then against Mackenzie Dern, you know, she dropped Dern in the first and really exposed Dern's tendency to leave her chin in the air. Andrade racked up 4 knockdowns in that fight. She outclassed Dern on the feet, and now she's on a 2-fight winning streak, and she's being given a chance to show she can fight and have success against the new generation. But I think this is where the streak ends for Andrade, man. Before Marina and Dern, she was on a 3-fight losing streak, all by finish. Yan Xiaonan was much faster in the striking sequences and forced Andrade to throw haymakers, but Andrade had little to no success, and she ended up walking into a right hook that put Andrade out early in the first round. And then Suarez and Blanchfield took Andrade down and were both able to lock in a submission in the second round. But in that fight with Blanchfield, you know, honestly, in the fight with Suarez as well, prior to those two getting a takedown, they had a lot of success and they were winning minutes on the feet against Jessica Andrade. I rate Natalia Silva's striking just as good, if not better, as the names I've just mentioned. And the advantage she will have on the feet, I think it's very clear in this fight. I don't expect Silva to take Andrade down, but I think she will have more than enough success with her karate background and her footwork. She's going to definitely outvolume Andrade here, and she can even finish this fight if she can set up Andrade the same way Yan Xiaonan did. But I think Silva will play it safe and win this one by a dominant decision. I can see her outpointing Jessica Andrade every minute of this fight, and if Andrade has no success getting this one down, I don't see her winning a round here. So I got to go Natalia Silva by a dominant decision. Next up, we got the main event. Gilbert Burns taking on Sean Brady. Gilbert Burns has definitely lost a step as he's getting older, but even at 38 years old, still looks like he can fight with the best of the best. And you know, he never says no to a fight. He's extremely well-rounded. He's taken on every challenge, and he finds himself in another one with rising contender Sean Brady. It was an all-out war with Gilbert Burns and Khamzat Chimaev. He fought Belal Muhammad, the current champ, on short notice. He blew out his shoulder in the first round, but he never got finished. The eye-opener for me in that fight was the fact that Belal won that fight without shooting for any takedowns. You know, he outstruck Burns 132-81, and Burns, obviously, one arm, was going to get outstruck, but defensively, I thought he could have done a better job at avoiding some shots coming his way. I thought Belal had a lot of success with the jab, and it seems to be the theme with Gilbert Burns when up against these strong grapplers. They are able to have success against him in the striking. Kamaru Usman dropped Burns with a jab, and that jab was the story of the fight. Usman was landing it consistently, and it eventually caught up to Burns, and he wilted. He definitely folded to the power. In Burns' last one with JDM, I thought defensively, again, he got outstruck pretty bad on the feet. He knew his advantage on the ground, and that's where he took it, man. He was up 2-1 on 2 out of 3 judges' scorecards heading into the third round with JDM, and it was a lot to do with his grappling and control time that he racked up. But JDM, he proved just how tough he is to keep down. Eventually had Burns desperate and gassed in the last minute of the third, and a few strong punches and elbows was all it took for Burns to go down and lose his second consecutive fight in a row, something that has never happened in his career. And so he definitely feels like this is a must-win situation here for him. And for Brady, this is an opportunity to show he's ready for a step up in competition. You know, the first main event and 5-round fight for Sean Brady in his career. He's gotten his wins by taking down his opponents and showcasing his dominant top control and submission game. I think Brady will be tempted to grapple with Gilbert Burns in this matchup, and that's something that many are really not trying their chances with, because Gilbert Burns, we know, 4-time jiu-jitsu champion, very credited on the ground, but Brady, he hasn't really shown that he can get the job done on the feet. So I don't think that he's going to
you know, divert from the game plan here. I do think he's going to try his luck with Gilbert Burns on the ground. He is extremely strong. We saw that against Calvin Gastelum. We've seen that in all of his matchups, man. He is very strong when the fight gets to the ground. He's got great top control. He's very patient. He will not mind winning those minutes just with control time. And, you know, we saw that against Michael Chiesa. He tested himself on the ground against a guy who's very credited in the jiu-jitsu himself, in Michael Chiesa, and he got his hand raised in that fight. Sean Brady, I thought, you know, the loss to Belal Muhammad, you know, which is the opponent that these two share, what definitely stood out to me was his defensive awareness there in that fight, man. Another fight where you can say, just like Gilbert Burns, you know, a grappler was able to have a lot of success against another grappler in the striking, and it was not Brady that night. Brady took a lot of punches and actually got finished in the second round against Belal Muhammad. Not a good look. And I do think Burns can match Brady very well in the grappling exchanges, and Burns can potentially be the better striker. But where I think Brady is going to have the advantages is just simply in the youth and the strength. I think he's going to be the stronger fighter right now at this point in these guys' careers. It's no secret, you know, Gilbert Burns is 38 years old. Like I said, he is a step behind now. And I think that's just going to be the difference maker in this fight. I have to side with Sean Brady in this one. I think he's going to get the job done here. He hasn't fought the same level of competition, and where he does his best work is where Gilbert Burns is elite. So I'm having a hard time with this main event pick here, but I do think that I have to side with youth over experience, and that's Sean Brady. I'm going to go with Sean Brady to get the job done here by decision. I don't think he's going to be able to finish a guy like Gilbert Burns on the ground. Gilbert Burns understands that if he is on bottom, he's got the fight IQ to know that he's going to be losing those minutes on the judges' scorecard. So I do think that he's not going to be accepting bottom position, but I don't know at this stage in his career if it's going to be enough to work his way back up now. So I got to go with Sean Brady, and I think he gets it done by decision, man. And there you guys have it, man. Those are my picks and predictions. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think of these picks in the comments. I'm out of here, man. Peace.